church on what it means to show up in people's lives, to make an impact, to make a difference, to have relationships that are meaningful with each other. And last week we talked about how this is a lifestyle. It's more than just a skill set or something like that. And one of the things that makes it a lifestyle is that showing up isn't about going someplace as much as it is wherever I am, others are welcome. Wherever I'm at, people can feel safe to come and be themselves and let their guard down and see what kind of transformation comes through those kinds of moments. That kind of showing up is how we fulfill the purpose that Jesus gave us. When Jesus was getting ready to ascend back into heaven, he gathered his disciples together and he gave them a commission. We call it the Great Commission. And real quickly, what it says is, as you go, make disciples, baptize them, and teach them to obey everything that I have commanded you. That is our purpose. Now, the crazy thing about purpose is that purpose should give us passion. It should give us a sense of excitement, a sense of I get to get up and I get to do this today. This is why I am here. If you've been disturbed at all by the state of our world or our nation or even your own family or your own life, fulfilling this purpose is an incredible way to do something about that. But I have to ask you an honest question, especially those of you who follow Jesus. Have you been excited about this? Like, has this purpose that Jesus has given you really given you a lot of passion lately? When we were growing up, we would have trouble going to sleep on Christmas Eve because we were too excited about what was coming and the possibilities of what were waiting for us the next morning. And that has translated over to my kids, where we even, and when they were really little, we had to do something special where we put this glitter, basically, that one of the kindergarten teachers had given underneath their pillows to help them calm down and fall asleep. Because when we were getting ready to go somewhere, they were so excited about what they were going to get to do, who they were going to get to see. The possibilities of adventure were endless, and they could not wait to get there. And if they didn't sleep and were too tired the next day, so be it. They just could not contain the excitement they felt. Have you ever felt that way about the purpose that Jesus has given you and to me to go as we go and to make disciples? I think sometimes we fail to get worked up about that. We don't have a lot of passion about it because we hope and pray maybe that we are an exception to Jesus' command to go do this, or maybe we hope and pray that we can get out of it because it's just excruciating to think about. So if you are one of those people that hopes it's an exception, you probably fit into one of two camps. You either hope it's an exception because it's not your job, like you have a job description for your life like you do at work, and when they ask you to do something that's off it, you can say, I'm sorry, that's not my job, I don't have to do it. In fact, you could be looking at me right now and be like, that's your job. You're the pastor. You're the one that does that. There may be some other really holy people, really special people that's their job too. They get to go out and they get to tell people about Jesus and they get to go make a difference that way. But that's not your job. And you'll cheer those people on. You may even, give them a Bible or buy them lunch one day and say, hey, good job. But that's not your responsibility. Some of you might think it's not your responsibility because you fit into this other camp of exceptions. It's not that it's not your job, it's just that you'd be terrible at it, so it shouldn't be your job. That's not your skill set. Other people will do so much better at telling people about Jesus than you will that you shouldn't have any part in doing it. Like, you don't have the temperament for it. You're awkward, you don't know how to approach people, you're really shy, and it just would not work. Or maybe you're the opposite. Maybe you're super aggressive. Maybe you're incredibly impatient. And the idea of listening to somebody talk drives you nuts. You won't even order a pizza that you can't get on your phone through the app anymore because you don't want to deal with whoever it is on the other end. There's no reason you should be part of this. Or maybe you just don't have the knowledge or the experience that you think you need. Like, this whole following Jesus thing is new to you. There are other people who are way more seasoned, way more experienced that can do more about it. and you don't have answers to the questions that people are going to ask. And so why would you put yourself in that position in the first place? And if you tried to go and make disciples as you go, what's going to happen is as you go, there's just going to be a big mess that you won't be able to clean up. They are our excruciating expectations about what happens when we are not supposed to do this or aren't able to do this, right? And then you get sometimes that this purpose is for everyone who follows Jesus, and so there's probably not exceptions, but man, you really wish there was, because this is not going to be good. You would rather do anything else. Scrub toilets, change diapers, maybe clean the little pieces of gum that are stuck under desks at schools or park benches around the country. Anything else to get out of what Jesus has said your purpose is. And you've maybe even tried to bargain with God about it. Look, Jesus, I've been saving up a lot of change in my car. As soon as those red kettles come out, I'm dumping all of it in. No more vending machines. Or maybe you're like, I will sponsor all of the kids I see on television that need help this year. 50 kids sponsored by me. Just don't let me have to do this. The Great Commission is more of a great suggestion, right? Because the picture in your head about what it looks like is terrifying. Maybe for you it looks like going door to door, cold calling people and asking them if they know what will happen to them when they die. Like, what is that supposed to end up like? Maybe it looks like preaching on a street corner, holding up signs and declaring that the world is about to end. Maybe it looks like getting stuck in a conversation with someone who you like and them not liking you anymore. Maybe it looks like being in a conversation with somebody and you looking dumb because you don't even know what you believe. Whatever it is terrifying and it is excruciating. And what will happen to the people that you have these conversations with, especially the ones that you actually like and actually want to spend time with and be with afterwards? They're going to think you're weird. They're going to think that you think you're better than them. They're going to think that everything that they do, you're judging. And so they won't be able to be themselves around you anymore. And so you don't want to disciple, you don't want to baptize, you don't want to teach them to obey as you go. Because this is what it is. And if you've ever felt that you're an exception, or if you ever thought that it's going to be excruciating, I want you just to take one deep cleansing breath right now. Because what Jesus is asking of you is a little bit different than what you're thinking. This really is for anyone. Because if you can learn how to be a friend, then you can learn how to do this Great Commission. Because the Great Commission is connection. When Paul is writing to the Corinthian church, he describes it this way. He says, look, what you're called to do is reconciliation. God is at work right now in this world trying to reconcile, make right, and bring relationships back together. He's doing it by forgiving sins, and he's doing it by healing relationships. The relationships that we have with God, the relationships we have with ourselves, and the relationships we have with each other. God is reconciling these right now, if we'll let him. And the crazy thing about it is, God entrusts you and I with that connection. That we're supposed to help share that with other people. And it's not about your skill or your abilities or your personalities then, right? Because if you are an ambassador, then the ambassador represents the one who sent them. And when the ambassador shows up, it is all of the authority and the power and the dignity and the respect and the honor. It's all of that of the person that they represent that shows up with the ambassador. So when you go, as you go, to help people reconcile, to connect them to God and to each other and to themselves again, when you're going to help bring them this real life, it's not about your skills or abilities. It is about the fact that the power of God and the grace of God, the one that you represent, is going with you, and he will do the work. You just have to share the hope of God's grace and how that connection is available. Eugene Peterson rewrote these verses in the Message this way, and I want you to look at all of this connection, friendship, relationship piece. Because if you can have a relationship with somebody else, if you can be a friend, then you can fulfill the purpose that Jesus has for you. This is what he says. He says, now we look inside, and what we see is that anyone united with the Messiah gets a fresh start, is created new. The old life is gone, a new life burgeons. Look at it. All of this comes from the God who settled the relationship between us and him, and then called us to settle our relationships with each other. God put the world square with himself through the Messiah, giving the world a fresh start by offering forgiveness of sins. That sounds good right now, doesn't it? God has given us the task of telling everyone what he's doing. We're Christ's representatives. God uses us to persuade men and women to drop their differences and enter into God's work of making things right between them. We're speaking for Christ himself now. Listen very carefully. This is how he's defining this work. Become friends with God. He's already a friend with you. Become friends with God. You are a part of helping people discover this. And you do it by being a friend with them, by making these connections. And I pray you are already making them, and you make them by caring about other people. When you care about other people, you develop friendships that are sustaining and life-giving and death-defying, and dare I even say, holy. But how in the world do you do that? Where do you even start to show up in people's lives? There's a book by two friends of mine, two that I really respect and look up to. It's actually named Showing Up. And in it, they list 5 promises of the person who is committing to show up in somebody else's life. And this is a great place to start if you want to fulfill the purpose that God has for you in a way that will make you want to get up in the morning. The first promise is, I promise to love Jesus passionately. I promise to love Jesus passionately because I can't pour out for somebody else what I don't have inside myself. And so if I am not connected intimately to Jesus, then I have nothing to offer you in this relationship. So I promise to do that. The second promise is, I promise to love you unconditionally. There is no expectation on you in this relationship to act a certain way, to believe a certain thing, to do anything. I'm not here to judge your life. I'm not here to tell you anything that's wrong about who you are. I simply want to show up. I want to be loyal to you. I want to be present in what your life is going through because I love you and I care about you. And if I'm doing this right, you will never feel like you have to be somebody else around me. If I'm doing this right, when we're together, it will feel like the safest place you can be. The third promise is, I promise not to stalk or to sell. Look, I respect your boundaries. I am not ashamed of who Jesus is because of what he's done in my life, but I'm not trying to force that on you. I'm not trying to wait until just the right moment and then pounce on you with a selling point or try and stalk you until you do what I ask you to do. If you need space, you've got space. If you need boundaries, you've got boundaries. I'm not trying to play God in your life. The fourth promise, I promise to help as best I can. Look, friendships should be about selflessness, and so I'm going to actively work to see how I can serve you. I'm going to actively, intentionally do my best to help you, to meet your needs, to give what I have to you. It's going to look differently at different times. Maybe it's a meal, or helping to fix a car, or giving a ride, or watching some kids, or just being a shoulder you can cry on. But you can guarantee that one of the ways I will serve you and help you is by praying for you. Because I believe there is power to unleash life and blessing and opportunities for you that will come no other way than by lifting your name to Jesus. And the last promise, I promise to always be ready to tell you about Jesus. When the time is right, I'll share. When you're ready for it, not when I am. And I'll be able, to the best of my ability, to answer your questions. If I don't know the answers, I'll help you find them together. But I do this because I care about you, not because I'm trying to notch something off my belt. I do this because I don't look at you as a project. I look at you as a friend, and I don't want death to end this friendship. I want it to be something that can last forever. 5 simple promises that any of us really should be able to do. To love Jesus passionately, to love others unconditionally, not to sell or to stalk them, but to help them as best we can, and to be ready to tell them about Jesus when the time is right. Can you do that? Pastor Margaret Michael, one of the authors of this book, she's actually come and helped us here before at our church. She writes this story about her own life and how people showing up changed her. I remember driving down the road from our house one Saturday morning more than 20 years ago. For some reason, the parable of the sower was on my mind. It had been years since I'd heard that parable, but it was strange that I would recall it at that moment. I wasn't following the Lord and had no intention in doing so. I was raised in a Christian home. I'd heard countless Bible stories repeated over and over. I knew what the Bible said. Still, in that moment, there was no logical reason why I would have been thinking of that parable, or any parable for that matter. Really, I shouldn't have cared less. But strangely, as the story framed in my mind, I began to lay it like a grid over my life. In a moment, I realized that I was the stony ground from the story, that any God-born seed that might fall on me would just land on the dormant rocks of my heart and be snatched away. I was as dry and dead as dust. As I considered what that meant, what it really meant, my stomach sank and tears gathered. In my heart, in that moment, I knew. In fact, I think I said out loud in the car, I don't want to be stony ground. I want to be fertile soil. I knew my life had to be different. I knew I should start going to church. That's when I remembered 3 of my clients at the hair salon where I worked. All 3 were from the same church, and each one had been patiently and persistently inviting me to their church, Harrisonburg First Church of the Nazarene. They didn't give up on me, and God was seeking me. I went the following Sunday, and I've been part of that congregation ever since, and now I'm on a pastoral team and co-writing a book about presence. God pursued me, and his people were agents of his restoration of my life. Ambassadors of reconciliation, right? They didn't have special training or particularly charismatic personalities. That gives us hope. They simply were there, present, and God can do the same through you for the one you love. The Son of Man continues to seek and to save. Have you ever needed someone to just be there for you? Can you remember times in your life when you were hurting or lonely? You weren't interested in advice or in 7 steps to a better life. You just wanted to know that you weren't alone, that there was a comfort and hope in the presence of another person. The question this book asks is simple. Are you willing to be there for others, to be present? If you're willing, God will use you. You don't need special gifts, skills, or particular personality type. In fact, as Jesus-filled believers, filled with his holy presence, we too often underestimate the power of simply showing up for others. All you need to do is what Jesus did. Be there. If you are willing for Christ to reach others through you, he will. And the world at this moment needs us to show up with Christ in us. Last week we offered you a challenge to think about who are 3, 4, maybe 5 at most people that God is asking you to show up for, to commit to caring for during this season when loneliness and stress and everything else gets amplified. That's continued to be the case over this past week. It could be somebody in your family. It could be somebody in your neighborhood, at work. It could be somebody who voted differently than you. It could be someone that you have nothing in common with, but God has laid it on your heart to care for them. The challenge is to write them on a list, to put that list someplace that you will see daily and pray for them each day. And then I would add this to the challenge this week, that you would make 5 promises to them. And you would think and pray about how can you show and live out those promises this season. to love Jesus passionately, to love them unconditionally, to not stalk or to sell, to help as best you can, and to always be ready to tell others about Jesus. If you're willing to do that, God will use you, and you will discover that the passion for the purpose of God will rise up in your life. Because the Great Commission isn't an exception, and it's not excruciating. It really is connection. Let's pray. God, I pray that you would give us a passion to connect Jesus and other people together. That you would help us to be true friends. That the people that you would have us interact with are not projects, but people you loved enough to die for, and people we love enough to show up in their lives, to be present, just because we want to be there with them, going through whatever it is they're going through together. Lord, I believe if we do that, transformation comes, that new life comes, that reconciliation comes. Lord, I pray that you would give each of us the opportunity to be a part of that work that you're doing this week and in the weeks to come. Lord, this is how we are a part of really changing the world. This is how we're a part of changing destinies and everlasting eternity. Help us to want to do it. Help us to desire to get up and move each day knowing I get to be a part of what Christ is doing in the world. Lord, it is a high honor and it is a high privilege. So help us as we go to show up right in the lives that you've called us to show up in. Lord, it will be good when we do this. We pray these things in your name. Amen.